Hello again, everyone, and welcome back to Reddit Aliens. I am John, and as always, thank you so much for being here. A good topic for you today. Let's do it. What is your nightmare HOA story? Should be good. Please remember to like, share, hype, listen, and ask for a personal shout out, and subscribe. Have a great day.
My at-the-time girlfriend, now wife, rented a townhouse with friends in a community that had an HOA. There was a parking reserved for guests of the tenants. Ironically, parking was always an issue for my wife and her roommates, but always simple for me. I just popped on the visitor's pass and was good to go in that lot. I spent the night probably once or twice a week, and one day I woke to find my car missing. After some ace detective work, I found out that my 10-year-old at the time 5-speed manual transmission Honda had not been stolen but just towed. When I reached out to the HOA, they told me that there was a provision in the bylaws that said a car could only be parked at a visitor spot for a maximum of 72 hours, and that a board member submitted my car to a list of cars to be towed due to abusing a visitor's pass. They argued the language in the bylaws was such that the total amount of time that a car may be parked in the visitor's lot was 72 hours, non-consecutively, i.e. if you park there once a week for 10 hours a week, on the 8th week, we are in violation of the policy. This in opposition to the clear purpose of the provision, which is to prevent people from storing their cars in the lot. They summarily denied my request at the next HOA meeting to recover the $150 towing fee. We live in a condo and began receiving $100 fines for not picking up dog poop. The area behind our building is a common area and lots of people walk their dogs around. I offered to submit DNA testing for my dogs and they ignored me and continued to send notices of fines. I began taking my phone with me on every walk and took photos and videos of me picking up poop with time-stamped evidence. I sent a folder full of photos to the HOA with photographic evidence that I was picking up after my dogs. We continued to receive fines. I got a small trash can and kept on my patio and began saving my bags of dog poop for 2 weeks. I did tie the bags, but then were still obviously smelly as poop bags are, very thin plastic. I then mailed a box of poop to the HOA office, along with copies of time-stamped photos showing I had picked it up. I told them that I had better not ever receive another fine for dog poop because I had provided more than sufficient evidence that it wasn't us. Miraculously, the fines stopped and we haven't received any for over 2 years. Rented a house at an HOA. It wasn't too bad, just normal stuff, but every now and then some board members would tool around and hand out fines for dirty driveways and such. Wouldn't have cared if the president and a board member didn't live on the same street as me, and their driveways were in massive disrepair. The board member's son did some work on his truck and there was a massive oil spill, partly covered with a red towel that sat there for 8 months, while a few rust-colored streaks on our concrete was worthy of a fine. The funniest was when the HOA decided to install very aggressive speed bumps, the ones that were previously fine, graded to not be too jarring but required you slow down. The only accident that occurred while we were there was the spouse of the HOA board member driving drunk and plowing into a tree. But there was always notices and mailings for people to slow down as this is not a racetrack. I guess they felt adding in a couple of literal asphalt curbs in the middle of the street would show people who dared to drive over 10 miles an hour on the main road. The only way over these things without feeling like you were going to break something in your car was to ease up the first side, come to a complete stop, then slowly ease down the drop. Once for the front wheels, another for the rear. Some people had just been taken to driving on the grass around them, so they put up concrete barriers there. After a few weeks, someone decided to pour diesel fuel on the speed bumps the day before the garage trucks did their rounds. The speed bumps got completely destroyed. The HOA reinstalled the bumps and somehow made them even more aggressive, and a week later, Captain Diesel struck again. They yanked them out again, and just paved over the holes. It was beautiful. They did end up installing speed bumps a few months later, but they went with the stock plastic ones that bolt to the street, which was much more preferable to the man-made cliffs of Dover that were there previously.
Okay, it's shoutout time today. Also, I did enjoy this topic. It's one we haven't done, I don't think, maybe ever, or at least in a really long time. But on to the quick 3 shoutouts today. Not too bad. Let's see. We have Bob After Dark was talking about me not showing my face anymore. Bob, I used to have to do it like 3 times a video, so this is nothing. So, but yeah, it's kind of a YouTube requirement. Fighting against the bot stuff. I don't know. It's beyond me, but it keeps it going. All right, so just skip ahead. Anyway, Star Fox 1909. This is your shout out. Thank you for your continued support, and please keep it up. And lastly, Amy Josephine 7847. Just want to send my condolences to you and your family in this trying time, and I hope that things get better in the days, weeks, and months to come. Thanks for your support and listening. And to all of you, again, special requests, birthday wishes, anything. Just poke fun at me, anything. Have a great day, guys. We'll see you soon.
I would sit in my yard with my dog between 4 and 6 p.m. every Friday for 3 months. Why? Because the HOA would measure my grass every Friday. My lawn guy was the best, and I refused to switch. However, he could only come on Saturday. HOA lets us choose which day we are inspected. Everyone voted for Saturdays. They secretly vetoed it and came Fridays, but claimed it was Saturday they were coming. To prove this, I sat with my dog every Friday waiting for him. He would park, wait a while, then go to another street and measure there. My street was the only one who didn't receive fines for breaking the agreement. It became a party when everyone figured out what I was doing. People would cook out in the front, and we would all go throw on coals and food as needed. I got reported for something or other, and after the 3-month marker, so I brought my supercut 3 months of time-stamped videos and submitted them to the HOA distribution list before I went to meet with them. There were 40 to 50 people there because we had organized a day to go and air grievances. It was maybe the best time I ever spent with any HOA. Upscale beach neighborhood repeatedly refused my solar panel application, cited the location of them as being an eyesore, top of the back side of the house not visible from the street, and fought me at 4 different meetings, delaying my installation, ultimately cited the state law, and they immediately backed down and amended their covenants. P.S. A clothes line is a solar collection device, and they cannot deny you use of that either. So, if you want to play dirty, hang a bunch of beach towels in your yard. I live in a neighborhood with a park in the center located directly behind my back fence. The entire neighborhood was managed by the same HOA company, but the neighborhood was officially set up as 2 different HOA communities, even though it was on the other side of my fence. The park was designated as part of the community I was not in. On multiple occasions, the irrigation system in the park broke and completely flooded my backyard. 3 or 4 times over a span of a few months, I woke up to literally 1.5 feet of water. Over time, my brick fire pit literally sank into the ground. An entire layer of brick water came into my kitchen on 2 of these occasions, and every time my home's foundation looked weaker and weaker after cleanup. I called to complain to the HOA each time. The flooding almost always happened on a weekend, and it wouldn't be until Monday that they came out, leaving my home flooded for a minimum of 2 days each time. After the 3rd and 4th complaint, I finally reported them to the Better Business Bureau and the Water Authority, and I sent a video to the local news. The next business day, the head of the HOA company called me furious. Despite all the pictures and videos I'd sent, she said she was convinced I was making it all up. When I pressed her why she thought that, she specifically said it was because the park can't be flooding your house. It's not even part of the same HOA community you live in. We've only been part of an HOA for the last few months, and it's already living up to every stereotype I ever had in my head. They held our once annual meeting with very little notice, and like 6 people showed up. They elected a new association and immediately decided to spend $700 on dog shit receptacles, even though like 4 people have dogs, and the whole neighborhood is 1 street. This sparked an incredible amount of drama. One guy on the HOA decided he was going to get super defensive when people started questioning this decision. And it quickly devolved into him just taunting people on Facebook because he was on the board and they weren't. And if they didn't like his authority, they should change the bylaws. Then someone left a bunch of dog shit in his driveway. Then he resigned from the HOA. No word on the dog shit receptacles. This has all happened in the past 3 days. Mother-in-law was fighting stage 4 ovarian cancer a few years ago, had no desire to take down our Christmas lights. We were constantly visiting the hospital, very touch and go. Had a child under 1, was a very emotional time. HOA compliance officer constantly would stop at our house at all hours of the day. We had security cameras, so finally after reviewing the footage, we called the guard shack to see what the emergency was. We were told that Christmas lights had been over for 3 weeks, and we need to have our lights down before the end of the month, or he would fine us $25 a day for the rest of the first week, then $50 each day after that. We explained the situation, and the guy said, "Well, it's not my problem, take your lights down." My wife exploded on the douchebag, went to the next board meeting and let loose on the board and the general manager. Turns out it wasn't an HOA policy. The guy worked for the security company that was hired to work the main entrance guard shack, and would get a bonus if he would patrol and hand out fines for HOA violations. This asshole would just drive around and make up his own rules and fines, and by the time this next meeting was fired and a new security company was hired, when the contract was up in the summer. Everything worked out in the end. Douche fired, mother-in-law cancer-free for over a year. Was moving to a different city and crashed at my dad's townhouse for a few months to save money for the move. One day a guy showed up to install a satellite dish that my dad ordered. My dad isn't the type of guy to pay very close attention to HOA rules, and apparently missed a brand new and highly contentious rule that satellite dishes were eyesores and no longer allowed. So, just as the installer guy is getting up on the roof, this couple, head of the HOA, come sprinting from their townhouse across the street to shut it down, screaming bloody murder. I had absolutely no issue with not getting a satellite dish. It wasn't even my house, but these two HOA thugs were absolutely awful. The wife was just hurling insults at the installer guy, and I and the husband immediately started climbing the ladder up onto the roof to kick the shit out of the installer guy. None of this was provoked at all. It just went from 0 to 100 in no time flat, and this couple was out of control. Well, the installer guy eventually had enough of having racist insults hurled at him and came down the ladder and started a full-on brawl with the husband in my dad's driveway. The wife was screaming at the top of her lungs at me, a stoned couch surfer, whose only contribution to this whole fiasco was to answer a door and let a guy on the roof. I still vividly remember being absolutely dumbfounded watching these two grown men beat the hell out of each other, while I tried to communicate to my dad on the phone over the shrill sounds of some strange woman absolutely berating me for ruining the neighborhood. It was wild. My family has been part of one for maybe 5 or 6 years now, and they fucking suck. We had to cut down a tree when we first moved in because its roots were cutting into the sewage pipes and backing up all our drains. To do that, we had to get approved to cut it down, and that took a few weeks. So we couldn't take a shower or flush a toilet for like 2 weeks. They also kept telling us to power wash our driveway, so we did once. We haven't done it again, but they think we did. They also keep raising the fees and giving no reason for it. I would expect that if they were adding things into the neighborhood or fixing something, but they just took out a few fountains from the lakes and they don't keep outside lights on anymore, so they should be saving money. Also, you can only paint your house certain colors, and I don't think you can use sidewalk chalk in the neighborhood either. We have the HOA president from the Third Reich. This man is on such a power trip, you'd think he was running a massive gulag where lives of 1 million peasants at his disposal. He protects even the most trivial information as if it were top secret intelligence, and dispenses his own brand of justice with no regard for the actual rule. And he's a liar. At the last general HOA meeting, we sat for 40 solid minutes while he regaled us with the vague bullshit stories about his years as a special forces officer in the United States Army. According to him, he's been shot twice, held for ransom in an undisclosed foreign hellhole, and awarded top-secret military honors that he isn't allowed to talk about. What? Here's the thing, though. He's maybe 5'5", weighs at least 350 pounds, didn't know how to break down the gym weightlifting equipment, and made a complete ass of himself by saluting a neighbor who came to the meeting late, still wearing his BDUs. The neighbor, who works at the nearby military base, laughed out loud and said, "Dude, I'm an E4. Guess who got written up for leaving his garbage cans out?" Other way around. My mom was the president of the HOA for her backwoods little neighborhood. Maybe 30 people lived there. Everyone used one well. The well had a problem once, so no one had water. It was $800 for a temporary fix or $2,000 for a permanent fix. My mom had a meeting where out of the 30 people, 5 showed up. No big deal. Those 5 people funded the $800 to get it fixed, since they have been without water for almost a week. No one would split the cost, and dues were so low it didn't cover them, so those 5 people paid for everyone's well. Well, in preparation for the actual fix, she tried to raise money, but only got half away there when it broke. My mom went door to door asking for everyone's share before they fixed it. It was like $50. It was another week without water. No one would pay for the well they all used. Finally, around half the neighborhood raised the money to fix it. Later, they all had a huge barbecue at my parents' house, but the people who didn't pay weren't invited. My best friend S grew up in a suburban Arizona. His family owned their home and rarely had problems with their HOA other than it being generally fascist. It all started with some cardboard boxes. S and his sister, at the ripe age of 6 or 7, wanted to make a fort in their front yard. Their dad, being a great guy, helped them build a shitty cardboard box fort for them to play in. Being kids, they played in the fort for a couple hours and proceeded to get distracted elsewhere. Not a day later, they received posted notices on the door and phone calls informing them that they need to clean this unsightly garbage out of their yard or face fines. It wasn't a huge deal, but left the family a bit jaded toward the HOA. Fast forward a handful of years later, S's dad decides he wants to paint the house. Now, if you don't know, most HOAs have strict rules on the color and send templates for you to pick off of. He said the templates ranged from tan to slightly different tan. S's dad finds a color he likes that's more of a greenish tan and sends it. Paints the whole house. The HOA proceeds to have a meltdown because they painted their house outside of the allowed color spectrum. S's dad says, "Nope, way, it's basically the same color. I'm not repainting my entire house." So the HOA hires a contractor to come down with a paint color tester and posts notices on their door with a detailed analysis of how his color is yucatan and doesn't fit the spectrum, and if they don't repaint by the end of the month, they will be fined. Instead of folding, S's mom finds out when the next meeting is and discovers no one votes. The same dude has been president of the HOA for way too long, and there is some shady shit going on in terms of contracting. So, she walks around the neighborhood the next few weeks campaigning and runs. She wins by a landslide, largest turnout for an HOA meeting since its inception. Apparently, everyone was also sick and tired of the bullshit, but just bent over. So S's mom is elected president and discovers that the previous regime was doing the old hook up my son-in-law by contracting his company and pay him stupid amounts of money to water the sand wash bullshit. She quickly ends all that shit. Rather than change any rules other than a few stupid ones, the S family office just decided to refuse to enforce any of them. S's mom goes years as president. Recently, she decided to get and didn't show up to the election, and someone else got elected. Now the new guy is trying to enforce the old rules, but everyone is so used to the freedom, there's no war going on. My HOA and their management company had a scam where they would not cash any dues check sent you to them, no matter when you sent it, until after it was due, so they could add late fees. I would send the checks via certified mail with delivery confirmation and return receipts, received with days to spare. and they still wouldn't cash them. Payment via their website never worked. I would call and try to pay by credit card over the phone, and they would just hang up. I handed the check to them in person. They still waited and charged a late fee. Then they refused to sign the closing paperwork when I sold my house. The delay almost cost me the sale. I'm honestly not sure if they were scumbags or just criminally lazy. Both are infuriating. My mom's been going through a lot of stupid HOA shit recently. 2.5 years ago, she needed a new storm door and contacted the HOA to get the proper paperwork for the request. 7 attempts, and 3 weeks later, after getting zero reply from the HOA, she decided to just go through with it by contacting the contractor the HOA uses and having them install one of their standard doors. She needed the door changed because the one in place was broken and didn't want to risk having to endure them installing in late fall or winter. This past November, the HOA contacted her saying her door was in violation of their standards and that she was required to change it before January. She contacted a lawyer over it, and long story short, she has to change the door. I told her that the HOA can go themselves because she tried to do it their way and they never responded. On top of that, who didn't notice the door in 2 years' time? It's obvious it's not the same as the doors on the other condos from as far back as you can see her unit. The real story here is that the guy in charge of the HOA is a power-tripping asshole who enforces the bylaws whenever he feels like it. Complete big fish in a little pond scenario, but he's really a small fish in the smallest pond, pushing around 65 years old retiree with a $300 door, which for some reason they told her was nearly $4,000, is Bush League bullshit. They sued me for thousands of dollars in late fees the day after Christmas. I was told my dues were the 15th, and when I bought the house, paid the 13th for a year or more. It was actually the 1st of the month. Turns out, the dipshit admin at the management company input my previous address and apartment when setting up my account, so I never saw a late notice. Explained the situation. They said no exceptions. I couldn't afford a lawyer to fight it. I swear to God, my HOA has a camera pointed directly at my house and hired somebody to watch it 24/7. Plumber came in to change my toilet and put the old one on the sidewalk next to his plumbing van while he was working for about 30 minutes. Got a letter from the HOA a week later that said, "Owner will remove toilet from front yard." How fucking dense do you have to be to not see what was going on there? Oh damn, my toilet garden idea isn't allowed. Fucking Muppets. Although these omnipresent assholes have neighborhood watch signs posted all over, nobody was fucking watching when my motorcycle was stolen from my driveway the one time I didn't pull it up onto my patio. So for my next motorcycle, I was sure to pull it onto my patio behind a gate and out of sight every time I rode it. It was only visible from the street for about 15 seconds while I unlocked the gate and came back to push the bike. Got a letter that said, "Owner will remove motorcycle from patio." Oh, you. This is generally a family affair with all of acting in some capacity, i.e. money talker, flagger, etc. There is also a local elementary school in the neighborhood that changes the same to park cars as well. The former community association president went rogue and saw fit to kick my 92-year-old grandfather's parking sign and threaten him. When the other family members saw the commotion and rushed to grandfather's aid, Bitch Boy jumped in his wife's waiting SUV and tore off. He then posted a rant on Facebook on the community page about how we're stealing from school children, endangering the community with our uninsured, it's insured, endeavor, and creating traffic jams. My dad lives in one of those weird over 50 communities. He was a member of their equivalent to an HOA. He was asked what mulch to get for the properties. He thought it was a nothing decision, so he picked one. His email was flooded with complaints about how the mulch was too dark, flooded, legit angry hate mail. They actually did go buy new mulch. It was crazy. My mom's HOA used to give discounts to the $249 a month fee to people who volunteered to walk around and mark violations of the restrictive covenants and other policies. Not only was the HOA trying to get away with outsourcing one of the few tasks they're paid to do, it went as badly as you expect due to the perverse incentive to report your neighbors for minor shit. It took almost half a year to undo because it's impossible to get a hold of anyone who actually has authority to make decisions. Her HOA was part of a larger management company hundreds of miles away. All of the front-facing community managers are low-level workers, so screaming at them was just rude and accomplished nothing. The board were all other residents, so they were paper tigers at most. And her state doesn't regulate HOAs, only condo associations. There was a war between two of my neighbors. You see, we had regulations as to what kind of trees you could have. Someone had planted these beautiful cherry blossom trees and lovingly cultivated them from saplings, but got told repeatedly that they were against HOA policy. The homeowner told the president to go for himself. This is not an exaggeration. According to what I heard, the guy literally said, "Go yourself," and left. The HOA president snuck over to the guy's house and cut down the trees at night. So the homeowner, rather than filing a suit, decided to do the same thing. He went to the HOA president's house and cut down his trees. Again, rather than calling the cops, the HOA president decided to start hacking up his bushes in the middle of the day. We moved before this somehow concluded itself, but man, upper middle class, middle-aged white people are weird. Not sure if I would call it a nightmare, but at my last house, we had an HOA. It was a townhouse community of about 50 units. There was a notice that went out that people had to keep their garbage cans in their garages and not outside where they could be seen by others. Most of the people that kept them out didn't comply, so they just started taking people's garbage cans away that were left out. As you can imagine, that didn't really help anything, and people just started leaving garbage laying out. Then the HOA board brought the garbage cans back out and just left them at the entrance of the community to be claimed once more. Well, there was just a wall of garbage cans at the entry for weeks, making it much more of an eyesore than a few cans out here and there. The whole thing I found pretty funny since they didn't fix anything and just made things that much worse. Way to go, guys. My husband and I moved into a condo in a building that was an old townhouse where each floor was turned into a different unit, 4 units total. The building had low HOA fees that our naive selves thought was a good thing. Unfortunately, it meant any building maintenance required a special assessment, and this was a brick building of over 100 years old and needed repointing. I acted as HOA president until I couldn't take the group's uselessness. Only other owner-occupied would agree with the last person who spoke, and one was an investment property for the owner and would just agree with whatever was reasonable, and the last was an asshat. We got multiple bids, agreed as a building on which to go with, did the work, and passed the special assessment. The whole annoying but correct procedure. Ted, the asshat, decided not to pay his part, something like $3,000. Okay, the HOA finally got an attorney to put a lien on his unit, but he kept questioning the attorney about things and racking up legal fees. Somehow a miracle occurs and he pays the lien and we sell from that dysfunctional building. Yay, everything was great, except the worst was about to start. The night before closing, we hear that Ted is filing a lawsuit against the HOA. Fortunately, we were still able to close because it was all cash sale, and the suit didn't involve our property specifically. But then Ted decided to go the extra spiteful and sued my husband personally for what he did while president of the HOA. We weren't even in anymore. Dragged on for about 8 months before the judge finally dismissed him from the suit, and the HOA won with all costs awarded. But that was the worst 8 months of my adult life so far, asshat. Our house almost went into foreclosure. When we bought it, They decided they suddenly wanted more than we agreed on or could pay, but told us we couldn't back out or they'd sue us for even more. And every lawyer we called said going after the company we were buying from would be career suicide. Anyways, after 12 years of bullshit, the bank was at our door. However, we were in court going through a bunch of bullshit with a shitty judge and a shitty bank where our HOA suddenly started mailing our monthly letters to our bank. They went as far as to tell the bank our house was disheveled because we had a basketball hoop, breaking the HOA rules, but them. However, the house had long been put back in our name at this point, not the bank's. Then they suddenly send a letter saying the HOA hired a second lawyer just to keep tabs on our situation, and that we were required to send them copies of all of our paperwork and pay for the second lawyer fees. Long story short, we found out the HOA president, our next door neighbor, was trying to get us kicked out so he could buy our house cheap for his fresh out of prison drug addict stepson, whose daughter lives with them because he lost all custody and the mother OD'd recently. I was not personally involved, but involved due to my line of work. Depositions were ongoing in a case involving a group of people suing the HOA where they resided in downtown Chicago. Neighbors were bullying other neighbors due to the way they voted on issues or because they weren't attending meetings. Paper bags of dog poop were being left at the door of one neighbor by another neighbor. They were both female and both attorneys in their 40s. Both came across as highly vindictive, sour, and just plain nasty. Bent out of shape for the embarrassment of this being litigated in front of everyone. They would get revenge for the way someone voted on an issue by blocking a car in so the person couldn't leave for a day, or by parking there when coming home, or they would park in someone else's spot, take someone else's deliveries from the lobby, and leave vile notes under each other's doors or taped to their door. 2 other female neighbors got in a physical fight in the lobby one morning while leaving for work, right in front of their doorman, who watched in apparent humor and refused to get involved. I listened to all this with a straight face and couldn't help but think, jerks paying that much to live in a nut house that they've all created.